My ex-wife stood in the lobby of my apartment building, her expensive luggage beside her, holding a rental application with shaking hands. "There must be some mistake," she said to the property manager. "This application was denied. We need this apartment. We have nowhere else to go." The property manager looked uncomfortable. "I'm sorry, Miss Davis. The owner personally reviewed your application and declined it." "Then let me speak to the owner." I stepped out from the back office. "You already are." Her face went from angry to confused to absolutely horrified. "Hello, Christine. Welcome to my building. Or should I say, welcome to the building you called a cage 2 weeks ago." This is the story of how my ex-wife mocked my poor apartment and ended up desperately trying to rent from the landlord she'd humiliated, me. My name is David, and 18 months ago my wife Christine left me for a man she believed was wealthy. We'd been married for 6 years. I worked in finance, made good money, but lived modestly. I drove a paid-off car, cooked at home, invested aggressively. Christine hated it. She wanted the lifestyle her friends had: designer clothes, luxury vacations, a penthouse downtown. "You make 6 figures, but we live like we make 50,000, she'd complain. "What's the point of making money if you don't spend it?" "I'm building wealth," I'd explained. "Investments, real estate, long-term security." "I don't want long-term security. I want to live now." She met Derek at a charity gala. Derek ran a property management company and drove a Mercedes, wore Rolex watches, took her to expensive restaurants. Christine filed for divorce 3 months later. "I'm trading up," she told me during the settlement. "Derek knows how to live. You know how to exist." The divorce was clean. No kids, minimal shared assets. She took her half and moved into Derek's penthouse overlooking the harbor. I took my half and made a different choice. After the divorce, I bought a unit in a mid-range apartment complex called Riverside Towers. It wasn't fancy. 3-story building, simple hallways, functional amenities. My apartment was a modest 2-bedroom with basic finishes. My colleagues were surprised. "You can afford better than this," one said. "I don't need better. I need cash flow." What they didn't know, I wasn't just renting in Riverside Towers. I was a silent investor in the ownership group. I'd partnered with 2 other investors to buy the building 5 years earlier, before I'd even met Christine. We hired a property management company, coincidentally Derek's company, Prestige Property Management, to handle day-to-day operations. I owned 40% of a building worth $8 million and lived in one of my own units, paying myself rent at cost. But I kept that information private. To everyone, including Christine, I was just a divorced guy living in a middle-class apartment building. 2 months after the divorce was finalized, Christine showed up at my door. She'd texted, "I have some of your old stuff from storage. I'll drop it off Saturday." I assumed she'd leave it at the door. Instead, she knocked. I opened the door to find her standing there in designer everything: Gucci bag, Louboutin heels, an outfit that probably cost more than my monthly utilities. "Hello, David," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Thought I'd deliver these personally." She handed me a box of random items I didn't care about: old books, kitchen gadgets, stuff she could have thrown away. Then she looked past me into my apartment. "Oh my God, is this where you live now?" She actually laughed. "David, this is so sad." "It's fine. It meets my needs." She stepped inside without being invited, looking around like she was touring a disaster zone. "The hallway smelled like old carpet. Your living room is the size of my walk-in closet. This is what you chose after our divorce?" "Christine, you should probably go." "I'm just saying, I'm so glad I left when I did. Derek and I live in a penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows and a rooftop terrace. You live in this cage." I stayed calm. "If you're done insulting my home—" "I'm not insulting it. I'm stating facts. You belong here, David, in a middle-class apartment building with stained carpets and fluorescent lighting.
I belong in a penthouse. We finally matched our environments to our worth." She left, still laughing. I closed the door and stood there for a moment. Then I made a phone call to my fellow investors. "I think it's time we audit Prestige Property Management. Something feels off."
Let me explain how I'd ended up owning 40% of my own building. 7 years ago, before I met Christine, I was working in corporate finance and looking to diversify into real estate. 2 colleagues, James and Rebecca, had the same idea. We pooled our money to buy a multifamily property as an investment. Riverside Towers came on the market for $6.2 million. We put down 25%, $1.55 million split 3 ways, and financed the rest. The building had strong fundamentals, good location, stable tenants, consistent cash flow. We hired Prestige Property Management to handle operations. They seemed professional. Derek had good references and industry connections. For the first few years, everything ran smoothly. We got our monthly distributions, the building appreciated, tenants were happy. I moved into the building 2 years later when a unit became available. It made sense financially. Why pay rent elsewhere when I could pay reduced rent to myself? The building was now worth about $8.5 million. My 40% stake was worth approximately $3.4 million. But I lived modestly in a $1,400 a month apartment, drove a Toyota, and let people think I was struggling post-divorce. Because the best wealth is invisible wealth. After Christine's visit, something bothered me. Derek drove a Mercedes, lived in an expensive penthouse, took luxury vacations. Property management doesn't pay that well. I knew the industry margins. I called James and Rebecca. "When's the last time we did a full audit of Prestige?" "Not since we hired them," Rebecca admitted. "Their monthly reports always look fine." "Let's commission an independent audit. Something feels off." We hired a forensic accounting firm to review 3 years of financial records. What they found was staggering. Derek had been embezzling systematically through multiple schemes. Scheme 1, inflated vendor costs. He'd created shell companies that provided maintenance services. We'd been paying $12,000 monthly for landscaping to a company that didn't exist. Derek pocketed the money. Scheme 2, phantom repairs. Regular invoices for emergency repairs that never happened. New HVAC units we'd supposedly replaced 3 times. Roof repairs done annually that were never actually done. Scheme 3, tenant deposit skimming. He'd collect security deposits, report them as paid to us, but keep portions for himself when tenants moved out. Total embezzled over 3 years, approximately $340,000. My share of the loss, $136,000. "We need to contact the police," James said when we reviewed the findings. "We will," I said, "but first let me make a business proposal." Prestige Property Management was owned by Derek, 60%, and 2 silent partners, 20% each. I reached out to the silent partners privately. "Are you aware that your managing partner has been embezzling from client properties?" I sent them the forensic audit. They weren't aware. They were horrified. "I'd like to buy you out," I said, "both of your stakes. I'll pay fair market value, and in exchange you cooperate with the investigation and avoid any liability." They agreed immediately. Neither wanted to be associated with fraud. I now owned 40% of Prestige Property Management. Then I approached Derek directly. "We've discovered the embezzlement," I told him in a meeting with our attorneys present. "You have 2 options. Sell me your stake at a discount and resign quietly, or face criminal charges and civil litigation that will bankrupt you." Derek was sweating. "How much for my stake?" "Given the fraud and the company's damaged reputation, I'll offer you $50,000 for 60% ownership. Take it or face prosecution." He took it.
Within 2 weeks, I owned 100% of Prestige Property Management. Derek was fired. We reported the embezzlement to police. He faced criminal charges. And his expensive lifestyle? It evaporated. The Mercedes was repossessed. The penthouse lease was under the company name, terminated immediately. Christine, who'd married Derek for his money, suddenly discovered he had none.
10 days after Derek was fired, I got a call from the property manager at Riverside Towers, who now worked for me. Mr. Harrison, we received a rental application from a Christine Davis and Derek Morrison. They're requesting a 2-bedroom unit. I looked at the application. Christine's signature, Derek's signature. They were trying to move into my building. Schedule them for an apartment viewing, I said. I'll handle it personally. The next afternoon, Christine and Derek arrived at the building. I watched on security cameras as they walked through the lobby, the same lobby Christine had mocked. The property manager showed them a modest 2-bedroom unit, similar to mine. It's smaller than we'd hoped, Christine said, her voice strained, but it'll work temporarily until Derek's new position starts. What new position? Derek was unhireable. He had criminal fraud charges pending. After the tour, they filled out the application in the lobby. I waited 24 hours, then sent the denial letter. When Christine came back to contest it, I was waiting. There must be some mistake, Christine said to the property manager. We need this apartment. The application can't be denied. I'm sorry, Miss Davis. The owner personally reviewed and declined it. Then I want to speak to the owner. This is discrimination. I stepped out from the office. You're speaking to him. Christine's face went through that beautiful sequence of emotions I'd seen so many times in these stories. David, you're the property manager? I'm the owner. This is my building. Has been for 7 years. Derek looked like he might faint. You own Riverside Towers? I own the building, and as of last week, I own Prestige Property Management, the company you embezzled $340,000 from. Christine grabbed my arm. David, please, we need somewhere to live. Derek lost his job because he committed fraud against me, among others. We can't afford anything else. Then you should have thought about that before you married him for his money that, it turns out, he stole. Derek spoke up weakly. I can pay you back. Set up a payment plan. You'll pay me back through the criminal restitution process, but you won't be living in my building. Christine was crying now. You're doing this to punish me, for leaving me, for what I said about your apartment. No, Christine, I'm doing this because Derek committed fraud, and you're listed as a co-applicant on his financial documents. That makes you a liability. It's a business decision. Please, she whispered, we have nowhere to go. You told me I belonged in a cage. You said you belonged in a penthouse. Maybe you should find one. I walked back to my office and closed the door. Christine and Derek moved into a budget motel while looking for housing. Derek faced criminal charges and eventually took a plea deal, restitution, probation, and a permanent stain on his record. Christine divorced him 6 months later. Last I heard, she's living with roommates and working in retail. As for me, I still live in my modest apartment at Riverside Towers. I own the building outright now, bought out James and Rebecca when they wanted to cash out. I own Prestige Property Management, which I restructured and rebranded. It's now a legitimate, ethical company managing properties across the city. My net worth is somewhere north of $5 million, and I still drive my paid-off Toyota and cook dinner at home. Because real wealth isn't about looking rich, it's about being free. The lesson here isn't get revenge on your ex, it's build real wealth, not the appearance of wealth. Derek looked rich, drove expensive cars, lived in a penthouse, wore designer everything. All of it was stolen money in debt. When his fraud collapsed, so did his entire lifestyle. I looked average, lived modestly, drove an old car, lived in a cage, but I owned the cage, and the building around it, and a management company, and my freedom. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe for more stories about building real wealth, living below your means, and the power of patient investing. And remember, the person in the modest apartment might own the entire building. See you next time.